Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I am the host, Marc Givler. I have Kevin Noon of BuckeyeHuddle.com with us. Today, we are going to kind of dive into an interesting topic, and I think it'll help us put a bow on the 2023 recruiting class. We're going to have a lot of 2024 recruiting content here on the channel moving forward here in the coming days and weeks, of course. But, 2023 just kind of wrapped up. We're not expecting anyone in the late signing period for Ohio State in terms of high school prospects. So we think 2023 is pretty much finalized. We've had a chance to look at these guys a lot the last couple months. And so we're going to talk about 5 incoming true freshmen that Kevin and I each think can make some type of early impact at Ohio State. We're not exactly promising that they're going to be all conference as true freshmen or anything like that, but guys that we can see getting on the field, making some impact this fall for the Buckeyes. We each have a different list. There's a little bit of overlap, but with the class kind of being finalized now, and we're going to get to talk to some of these guys, I think, soon. There's usually a February availability for the early enrollees. So we may be hearing from some of these guys soon. I thought it was a good time to get the ball rolling before we get into spring practice about some guys that we're pretty excited about entering the program. So first of all, Kevin, how are we doing today? And how is life on the beat in the dull days of mid-January through spring ball?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, doing well, and people are ready to move on to spring football. I mean, we're not that far removed from the national championship game. It's only a couple weeks ago, and everybody's itching to get into the next season and see what things look like as winter conditioning is going on over at the Woody. It's weird being in the position of not having recruiting per se to cover for the current class going into the February signing period, but that's just, life in the big city. And we could get into a whole different show about how stupid early signing period is, the way that they have it installed now. But I'm glad to be able to get away from basketball for a second. And it's not that I don't enjoy college basketball, and it's not that I don't enjoy talking to the players on the team, but a little bit of apathy amongst fans right now as the January swoon is kicked in for Chris Holtman's team. And God bless football.
Yes, as always, it's as soon as the national championship's over, it feels like fans immediately, okay, what's now what? Winter workout, spring ball, give us the juice. So we're gonna do that here a little bit with the incoming freshmen. Obviously, it's always tough to make an early impact as a true freshman, especially at a place like Ohio State, a top 5 program, a lot of talented guys already kind of waiting for their opportunity that were already in the program, but we're gonna take a stab at this. We each have, like I said, 5 different guys coming in this recruiting class, which is maybe a little short on the numbers of what they would have liked, but in terms of the quality of player they signed, what was tremendous. So we think there's some guys here who could be on the field in the fall. And again, let's start with the first 2 we'll do are overlap. We each had these guys on our list that we put together, and I don't think either one of them is going to be a huge surprise. But let's start it with let's go with Brandon Inniss, 5-star wide receiver, American Heritage, South Florida powerhouse, was on both our lists. Kevin, I'll let you start kind of your rationale for Inniss being on your list.
Yeah, and I'll start by saying I don't know if they're going to be 5 true freshmen that are going to be able to have an impact next year for Ohio State when you return a lot. But you look at wide receiver, and obviously you have Marvin Harrison Jr. No, he's not going to USC. You have Emeka Egbuka. No, he's not going to USC. And then where do you really stand? I mean, you got Julian Fleming coming back, but I mean, there's been some inconsistency there. I mean, certainly he's had a hard time getting on the field leading up to last year due to injury. You have Xavier Johnson back. I mean, Jaden Ballard hasn't really been able to jump in and take the reins in his position. The recruiting class of 2022 has seen next to no time. So why not pick a 2023 wide receiver? And then we sit there, and Jackson Smith and Jigba, who really did not play last year, is gone. But, you're not saying, well, this guy's going to be JSN. I mean, JSN coming out of that Rose Bowl was the best wide receiver in college football at that point in my mind. So you're not coming in for that, but who's going to come in for that role, who is going to be able to play some inside, some outside, to be able to do some things there. Brandon Ennis is very much a Swiss Army knife in terms of a lot of things that he can do out there. Um, he's certainly a guy that I'm not going to bet against. I mean, truthfully speaking, if you told me that any of the 4 receivers in the class of 2023 were going to play, I would not be shocked. I mean, to be quite honest, but Ennis is just a special receiver. He's just built different. I mean, he's got the build. We don't know. I mean, we're not that far removed. Well, if you want to be able to get on the field, you better be able to block. Well, I trust Brandon Ennis probably to be able to block. So if that's still a hurdle to getting onto the field at receiver, as opposed to being a gunner on special teams or something like that, then I'm going to bet on Ennis. So I think that he is somebody who certainly has a strong capability of getting on the field as a true freshman.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've said this before. I think he's the most college ready receiver of the 4 they're bringing in. Physically, um, probably maturity wise, he's played so much football. He's been a star since his freshman year. He blocks. He can return kicks. Will they put a true freshman back there to return kicks in crunch time? I don't think so, but he does have some versatility there with being able to return kicks, can play special teams, can play outside, can play inside. I think there's going to be an opportunity for a slot type of guy like Ennis to get more run this year. I'm not moving Emeka Egbuka completely out of the slot or anything like that, but I think it's possible you could see Emeka play a little bit on the outside, which would in turn free up, whoever is slot receiver number 2. So I like, for all those reasons, I think he's going to be a guy that burns his red shirt. My only holdup is he's not enrolling early. I think that's obviously helpful for guys to get on the field early. But again, coming from the program he comes from and just how ready he is and just how good he looked in San Antonio recently. I was down there to watch him, and just he looks like a guy who's just not going to be denied some type of early playing time at some point. So yeah, I agree. That was a fairly easy one for me. I think one of the hardest parts about this list was, I think, again, you kind of hit on it. We could put 3 or 4 receivers, but then what type of discussion would that be if 4 of our top 5 was the 4 receivers they brought in? And certainly not all of them are going to, at least 1 or 2 of them are going to have to probably take a backseat or red shirt or, but, so we're kind of picking favorites here, I guess, among the early receivers, but yeah, I agree with Ennis. Our next one, so gets out of the way, is another receiver. Carnell Tate, IMG Academy, another 5-star guy. Kevin, what did you see out of Tate during covering him in high school, and why do you think he can get out there early?
I just think that he's somebody coming out of IMG. He's played amongst dudes, and you've got to be ready to do that. I mean, maybe something that where Noah Rogers and Bryson Rogers haven't necessarily had the opportunity to do in Rollsville, North Carolina, or out at Wiregrass Ranch High School in the greater Tampa area. Carnell Tate has seen, I mean, just on his own team when he was at IMG, and he's obviously, he's from Chicago, so I mean, he's seen dudes. So it's not going to be a case of where it's going to be like, wow, this is just too big for me. I'm not comfortable with this. Somebody else that just has, he has a great catch radius. I mean, I think just the fact that he's able to do so many different things out on the field, and I think versatility is going to be the thing that's going to get you out there quicker than even maybe what your top end is. And Carnell Tate's top end is amongst the highest out of anybody out there. Maybe not as much of the college ready body as Brandon Ennis, in my opinion, but we're not talking about everybody being out there being all rocked up and just, chiseled. I mean, that's just not necessarily the position. I mean, not everybody's Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, let's just be real there. But I think that Carnell Tate just just the pedigree he has of where he's played and how he's played in big games. Again, we couldn't take all 4 receivers. That would have been extremely boring. So, but I was comfortable taking 2, and Carnell Tate was like my second pick. I mean, it was Ennis, Tate, and then I had to start thinking a little bit more.
Yeah, this wasn't a fairly, I won't say easy one, but it was, yeah, I didn't put too much thought into this either. IMG prepares guys as well as anyone to step. It's as close as these kids can be into a major college football program in terms of year-round training, strength and conditioning, and everything else. Just the talent he goes against in practice every day. You know, I've said this with Ennis a million times about him being the most college ready. With Carnell, I think he's the most talented. And you know, one thing, I think this, you can apply this to my inclusion of Ennis as well, is I think they will rotate a little more at receiver this year. I think they have a little more uh, proven depth. Obviously, you lose Jackson early in the season last year. Cam Babb is just, you know, unfortunately just was not able to give them too much depth in terms of being able to play. It was highlight of the season for me was him catching that touchdown, but just, you know, from a week to week basis, you didn't have him. You know, Julian Fleming had some issues early, so this year I see them playing more guys at receiver. I also see there being games where, yeah, maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't need to play, you know, 90% of the snaps today. You know what I mean? And I think they could do that with a Marvin. I think they'd be looking to do that with a Mecca as well, is to maybe, you know, manage their workload a little bit as well throughout the season. So Carnell can play anywhere. He can play any of the 3, but you know, I think either of the outside spots, he's dynamic, and he's enrolling early. So he's on campus now. He's going through winter workouts. He's going to have a leg up on a lot of the other guys, and so I think that's a guy that comes in and definitely burns his red shirt. You know, not to take this too far off topic, but I immediately people are going to, I can already, like in the comments, I can already kind of see what's going to happen, which is going to be, well, what about all the 2022 receivers? You're expecting 2 2023s to come in. I'll let you tackle that for when that inevitably.
Thanks.
Your thoughts on that from the future comment section.
Well, I mean, I think that, I mean, if what you say holds true, and I believe it too, and they're going to run some more depth, I think that there's going to be an opportunity there. I don't know if, I mean, I don't know if we're going to be looking in April and every member of that 2022 class is going to still be with Ohio State. And that's not me putting anybody in the portal. We don't do that. That's not how we play. You can't unring a bell. The second you name somebody and say, I think they're going to transfer, and they don't transfer, it's really awkward trying to talk to that guy after that point, because they're aware. They're aware of what's being said about them. But getting recruited over happens sometimes, and I'm not saying, you know, this guy or that guy got recruited over. I mean, that 22 class was pretty special at the time when you look at the guys that they got there, but I'm also going to sit there and say none of them were able to separate out of the pack. And that was a pack that did not have JSN for 99.1% of the season or whatever it may have been. So this is going to be a very important spring for these 22 guys to try and hold off the 23 guys that are already on campus, and then getting into the summer once everybody else gets to town, because again, Bryson Rogers and Noah Rogers are both very talented in their own rights. And you know, you said that Carnell Tate may be the guy with, you know, with the that might be the most talented. We could get 2 years down the line and be like, well, maybe Noah Rogers was the best guy in the class. I mean, we don't know. And then when you have a guy like Bryson Rogers, oh, our sleeper is just a 4-star. I mean, that's first world problems to have right there. But yeah, also when the question is asked, who are the 5 guys, the 5 true freshmen that you think are going to be there? I mean, we have to kind of play the odds at that point, and the odds, this class was very heavy at wide receiver, and it would be very dishonest for us not to sit there and pick a couple of wide receivers if we're really trying to predict this. I mean, we may get 365 days from now and revisit this show and be like, wow, we really missed. Honestly, I did not think that Denzel Burke would be the corner to come out of that cornerback class. I thought it would be J.K. Johnson would be the first one there. Now he's off to Baton Rouge to LSU, and Denzel Burke has had kind of an up and down career so far, but it's hard to predict. But yeah, this is a chance for guys like Kojo Antwi and everybody else to Keon Grays to step up, because that pressure is going to be applied. They know what's coming in behind them, and opportunity may not even knock once, but it certainly could knock once, and they better be ready to answer that call if given the shot.
Yeah, nobody in 22 earned earned the leeway going into spring ball by having a freshman season that gave people something to really get excited about this year. We saw Garrett Wilson get out there early. We saw um, Smith and Jigba get out there early. Marvin Harrison in the Rose Bowl. Chris Olave in the Michigan game. So we've seen year after year someone, even if it's not as a starter, even if it's not as a normal full timer, by the end of the season, squeak their way into the rotation, do something, and that kind of propelled them into their sophomore year, second year on campus. And even with some injuries at receiver, none of the 2022s were able to do that. Now, it's not me writing them off by any stretch, but it's also, I think, indicative of the fact that this could be very tough for the 2022s and as we get into the competition of the spring. And they just, no one has separated, as you put it, from has earned the benefit of the doubt over the 2023 kids by some type of performance last year that would have put them in position to. So that's going to be interesting to me. I actually do think, and this isn't the show for this, but I really do think the battle for like wide receiver, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever you want, basically the twos, is one of the more fascinating off-season battles on the Ohio State roster, because there are so many talented guys, and there's only going to be like 3 spots, and there's going to be like 8 guys that want them, and it's going to be interesting. So that's going to be fun to watch. But okay, here's where we diverge a little bit, and we're on the same page on some of this. So we have different players, but we're thinking similarly on most of this. I would say the one guy that there's one kind of spot on our lists that maybe we don't, and so we'll go there first. Kevin, you have well, I'll let you say who it is. He's a tight end from Georgia. Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did take Jelani Thurman, and I know he's not the size that he needs to be yet. He's not at his college size. But I'm looking at the tight end room, and obviously you get Cade Stover back. And we certainly we saw some Joe Royer when Cade Stover got hurt in the Peach Bowl, but we didn't see Joe Royer necessarily get utilized a ton. So then you continue to go down the chart there, and you got Sam Hart, you got Bennett Christian, but I think there's an opportunity for Jelani Thurman, somebody who is on campus now, who is already getting into all of the NIL good graces and everything else, to have an impact, because Ohio State is still going to run some 12 personnel, and for those who don't follow closely, that means 1 back, 2 tights. And while you're certainly going to have Royer out, or you're certainly going to have Stover out there, why couldn't Thurman be that flex tight end? I mean, we could where are we going to see the offense go at that point? What are we going to see in terms of, do we have Ryan Day no longer the play caller as had been discussed? This is more of a Brian Hartline type of situation. Does Brian Hartline get enamored with the thought of having that flex tight end as somebody kind of grows into the position? What does the next 6 months look like under Mickey Marotti and the Ohio State strength and conditioning staff, and working with the dietitian and everything else? I'm just too intrigued by what Jelani Thurman could end up being to leave him off this list. Now, if we were 5 years ago and people were like, why do you have a tight end on this list? All they do is block. Well, I think that Jelani Thurman is not going to be the tight end that you're bringing in necessarily to have attached and be, your big blitz pickup type of guy or whatever. I think he's somebody that you see as much more of that offensive weapon, pass catcher. I mean, I'm not necessarily saying a Jake Stoneburner, but that's the first name that came to mind.
I mean, he reminds me of Jeremy Ruckert. They're physical, their basketball backgrounds, they're big athletic guys. They played a lot of receiver in high school, so they're kind of having to, he's going to have to learn how to block. My thing would be obviously the weight gain, but like how much 12 are they going to run this year? They've kind of went away from it a little bit. Now, how much of that was they didn't have a second guy they really trusted, because Mitch Rossi was not really a true tight end. He was kind of a throw. He's kind of an old school H-back, fullback type. So maybe they do that more with Stover with another year at tight end, improving his blocking, and Thurman could be kind of the pass catching part of that, possibly. Thurman would be on my way too early. Like, these will be the guys who we don't hear much about next year, but then year 2 they come out of nowhere and they're like awesome. That would be like Thurman would be like right at the top of that list for me. I'm extremely high on him, just like you are. I think he's super talented. I think he's probably the most talented tight end prospect they've brought in the last, probably since Ruckert. So, you're going back, 5 years maybe. So, I think long term, I'm definitely buying Jelani Thurman's stock. So, but yeah, that'll be interesting to see. And that'll be another interesting part of the offseason is like, okay, there's all these tight ends that they have behind Stover, and they all are a little bit different. They all kind of bring something different. And it's like, okay, which one of them is, none of them have really done much yet. Which one of them is going to emerge, because they are going to need a second guy. So that'll be interesting. And Thurman's, that you're as you were talking, you did kind of talk me into it a little bit. So we'll see. We'll see what happens here. It'll be fun to see him here in the spring. So then that'll bring me to kind of my guy, who I don't think we're, like I said, our last two are different, but we're on the same wavelength with this. So I'll bring up my third guy now, and that is Malik Hartford. I don't know if he's a God. I have to look at the final rankings. I know he was kind of all over the place a little bit, I think, with some of the industry. For me, if he's not a top 100 guy, he's a Givler 100 prospect. He's one of my favorite guys in his class. He's actually my top prospect in the state of Ohio for 2023, which was actually a really interesting kind of conversation. Maybe we should do a podcast on that too before we wrap up 23. But I think he's best player in Ohio. He's got to put on probably 10 to 15 pounds. He knows it. He's joking with me in San Antonio about he's, doesn't want to be known as the skinny kid or whatever. So, but he can hit, he can cover. He's very serious, very smart kid, but hardworking, serious, kind of chip on his shoulder. I think for whatever reason, I will have to dive into that with him during his career at Ohio State. Why are you always so serious? And you seem so angry all the time, but he's very driven. And just talking to him in San Antonio, I know he thinks he's got an opportunity to work his way into the 2 deep. Obviously Ohio State, some interesting guys coming back or in additions at the safety position. So, Lathan Ransom doesn't leave. Josh Proctor comes back. They go portal for another player, for the kid from Syracuse. So I think maybe 6 weeks ago, things would have looked a little more clear on the depth chart than they do now, but they're going to need to roll 5 or 6 of these guys, especially when we start talking about, garbage time and things like that. And I'm still not convinced Sonny Styles is a true safety. I think he's kind of more of a defensive weapon and, maybe moved around a lot. So I don't know that Styles blocks him too much. And I think Malik can play just about any of the safety positions. I think he can be a deep cover guy. I think he can be a guy who kind of plays up in the box, covers tight ends. I think he can do a lot of different things with him. Kevin, your thoughts on Hartford and kind of when he could make an impact?
Yeah, he was probably 6 or 7 on my list, and the reason he was that low was solely just because I thought that the room was a little too full. And you go out and you get Jahad Carter, and you have these returns, and how do you get out there? And that's the thing. I mean, with the wide receivers, we kind of talked about how that's the funnel is going to have to work there. Tight end, it feels like there's an opportunity to be the second tight end, or at least 2A, and maybe find a way there. But I thought that Malik Hartford, no matter how good he is, it's, there's some dudes in front of him. We haven't talked about Kai Stokes or, some guys like that. And Hartford, I think Hartford's top end may be a little bit higher than Kai Stokes, but Kai Stokes has been out on the field and done some things, and he's done some good. And certainly he had his rough moments. When you look at the the long touchdown that Wisconsin scored late in the game, and Kai took a bad angle, but he certainly learned from that. So I agree with everything you're saying. I think he's somebody who could play any of the three safety positions in the Jim Knowles type of defense. Um, with the chip he has on his shoulder, I think that he definitely would like to find a spot where he could be a thumper and be able to announce his presence on the field. But I think he could do. I think he could do any of them well. The only reason I didn't have him a little bit higher is I just think that the path is blocked a little bit, and that'll certainly clear up by 24.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're kind of you're with Hartford where I am with Thurman. He's on your way too early second year breakout watch list.
Right.
All right. So like I said, our last two we're not the same, but we're on the same page. So this will be our fourth guy for each of us. Let's go D line, Kevin. Who's your D lineman?
I took Caden McDonald, the big time nose tackle out of the state of Georgia. And this is my thought process there. They don't have a lot of one tech, zero tech type of guys. I mean, he's every bit of what 310 plus or something. I mean, he is a beast. And Ohio State does have some big bodies on the line, but you also see some clearing in that in that room, in that position. I mean, you still have some three techs, but who's going to completely block him when you see a defensive line that rotates a lot? So I think he's somebody who can have that opportunity. And we've seen young guys, we've seen Tyleik Williams step up and have some run as a true freshman. And I think that Caden McDonald, just because of his uniqueness, now that doesn't mean that he's going to be given anything. He's going to have to come in here and work his what off, and they're going to work on his strength and everything else and make sure that the weight that's on him is the right weight and it's proportioned the right way. So nothing there is assured, but I just think that I think Ohio State probably saw some things in terms of how maybe Georgia does its line. I mean, it's different because Georgia's a 3-4 versus Ohio State's 4-3, but I think that there's going to be more of a value on having that big space eater, and McDonald fits that bill. And you know what, if you have a situation where they're having to put more than one person on trying to slow him down, and that frees up some things for your edge rushers, that's certainly not a bad thing.
Yeah, that it wouldn't shock me either. He is bringing, I think, something a little bit unique to the table that they don't have a lot of. So I do think that helps him. He can also get after the passer, which that's going to help you if you can apply pressure to the quarterback, it's going to get you on the field in certain situations. So I'm following you on that. I also think they're going to see a young defensive lineman on the field this year. I think it's going to be Jason Moore. That's my guy, my fourth guy here. So first of all, Jason Moore is a college ready body. I mean, he's like 270 pounds right now. He's almost 6'6". I mean, he looks like he's been at Ohio State for a year or two already. When I saw just seeing him play back in September, is just unbelievable physical specimen. Very versatile, and this is why I kind of like him getting on there early. He can play end, he can play inside. He stands up and rushes the passer at DeMatha. There are so many different unique things he can do that I figure they will find something for him to do as a freshman. I just think, and it may not even be where he ultimately ends up. I mean, he may grow, they may start him as like a strong side end and eventually kick him inside. I mean, we don't know that for sure yet. So, but I'm betting on his versatility and him just being a college ready body from a big time program. To see him get on the field. I know this was kind of one of the crown jewels of their class. So that's where I'm going on that. Our last one, we're on the same page here again. We both think a corner is going to play early. Kevin, who's your guy?
I took Calvin Simpson-Hunt out of Waxahachie, Texas.
You just wanted to say Waxahachie, Texas.
Well, I mean, I love the area. Meat Church is down there. Call us, Meat Church. We'd love to have you sponsor the Skull Session podcast. But he's, kind of like Jason Moore. I think that Calvin Simpson-Hunt is one of those players that Ohio State fans don't really realize what they have with this guy. And We look at a corner position that was really thin in terms of numbers last year. We already mentioned J.K. Johnson is gone. So you do have a room full of guys in largely that have played. I mean, Cam Brown is gone. Obviously, he's off to the next level or, try a shot for the NFL. But, you had young guys like Jair Brown step up. We haven't necessarily seen what Ryan Turner is going to be. So I think that there's going to be an opportunity for a young corner to step into one of those roles and be able to get out there with a Denzel Burke, be able to get out there with Jordan Hancock. I was filibustering as the name had escaped me for the life of me there. I just think that based on what was going on through the very end of Simpson-Hunt's high school career, it just the news kept getting better and better and better. And it's like, this kid is just he's just excelling at everything that he's doing. And I think he's going to be one of these guys that's just going to get to Ohio State and flourish. Now, again, how do you get yourself onto the field? I mean, it may be a case of he's going to have to do some things on special teams. I mean, Jair Brown started last year a game or two. I mean, there are young guys that are standing right in front of him. But if this year is anything like last year, and I guess if we're talking about anything defensively, we're hoping it's not. But if it's anything like last year, it better be all hands on deck. And again, it was not me sleeping on any of the other corners, and I know who you're taking, and I absolutely love the kid that you're taking. So it's not a matter of me not thinking he can't do it, but I was very adamant I was going to take a corner, and I like an underdog, so I'm going to take the out-of-state kid. Just why not?
Yeah, I think seeing San Antonio, he's very mature physically. He's not someone who's got to come in and put on 20 pounds or, how's he going to, hold up physically. He's a really strong kid, track athlete, track speed. I tend to believe the top three corners are, I don't want to say set because they will let everyone kind of have their chance, but I think it's going to be tough unless there's an injury to unseat Burke, Brown, Hancock. I think that's probably going to be the three they mostly roll with. But you're going to play 4 or 5 corners throughout the year. You just are. Even if a lot of it's maybe not meaningful snaps, maybe it's fourth quarter or blowout. You're going to play 4 or 5. How many they start last year? Like 5 or 6 guys start a game at corner last year or something insane.
Absolutely, and they had to have Jake Seibert rep it at corner just so they had enough bodies. So yeah.
So someone's going to have to sneak into that rotation, and I think it's going to be Jermaine Matthews. So that'll be our last guy we talk about here. I think first of all, Jermaine. One of the big tiebreakers for me was Jermaine's on campus, and Calvin's running track. He's not going to be there until the summer. Puts Jermaine, I think, a little bit ahead. I think Jermaine probably does have a little more physical growth than Calvin to do. I think Jermaine's got to get a little bit stronger, a little bigger. But getting in there early at a position where they don't have a ton of bodies and hyper competitive kid. Him and Malik Hartford are and probably the two. There's a very common theme here. Hartford, Matthews, Ennis Tate. Those are like when I think of who's got like the most competitive spirit in this class. Like those are the guys that I kind of reel off. So there's maybe a common theme here for me, but Jermaine's hyper competitive, earned the offer at camp. I love his attitude. He kind of has that classic cornerback confidence, next play attitude where, even if he loses a rep, he would never let him, he would never let you see that his confidence is shaken. He's one of those types of kids. So I think he can get on there early. He's one of my top, I probably have him like 3 in Ohio, but I think it's all, those top 4 or 5 were all really good this year, but definitely one of the top guys in Ohio, definitely one of the top corners in the country. And again, I like the early enrollment, hyper competitive kid. And not that Jair was kind of a de facto Cincinnati. Like he grew up in Louisiana, but was early on in Cincinnati, then came back to Cincinnati. So, but I like Jair. I like the Jair Brown mentorship angle there as well. I think that'll go well for all those guys. So, yep. So those are our 5. So I guess should we recap? It was my 5 were 5 early impact freshmen, or the 5 guys we think could get on the field the earliest among the class. I've got wide receivers Carnell Tate and Brandon Innes. I've got defensive lineman Jason Moore. I've got safety Malik Hartford, and I've got cornerback Jermaine Matthews. Those are my 5. And then Kevin, you want to reel off your 5?
I had the same 2 receivers that you did. I had wide receiver Brandon Innes and wide receiver Carnell Tate. I stayed in the pass catching world with tight end Jelani Thurman, and then moving to defense, I had nose tackle Caden McDonald, and then I had cornerback Calvin Simpson-Hunt.
So I'm sure you'll hold us to it. You guys will hold us to it. Make sure we didn't miss anybody. I'm sure everyone in the comments will be telling us who we missed and how wrong we are, and that's good. That's a good thing. These were fun to put together and kind of debate. So we hope everyone will kind of do that either in the comments or come join us on BuckeyeHuddle.com, and we'll be talking about these types of things all month and into March here before we can get ramped up for spring ball. So that'll do it for this episode, but we appreciate everyone watching and listening, and we will catch you next time.